Very much, and good afternoon. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here today and to be following up on Christina's fantastic overview of the development of indicators of well-being, and to have the opportunity to present the work that we've been doing in Canada at this conference and to tackle the question of culture. It's certainly, and I'd like also to take the opportunity to extend our thanks both to UNESCO and to the municipality of Hangzhou for inviting us to participate. In the few minutes that I have, I'd like to introduce the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, or the CIW for short, and to talk to you a bit about how we first came to define progress. How we first came to define progress, and secondly, to tackle the question of culture in the index. When we encounter values such as diversity, fairness, equity, inclusion, economic security, and sustainability. Our first step was to engage Canadians through 3 rounds of coast-to-coast-to-coast public consultations in a process that, such as Christina alluded to, that we undertook in the UK. And this was a particularly large undertaking in Canada, given the size of the country, but it was a critical step in our development process, going out to ask people in communities what they thought about their own well-being. And through this process, we asked Canadians to speak candidly about what mattered to them in their own quality of life, and to help tell us what we should be measuring. Through this process, 8 different domains of well-being were identified. And here they are right here. Living standards, and several of these obviously are common across some of the examples you will be familiar with. So we have 8 domains. Living standards, healthy populations, the environment, community vitality, education, time use, and that's a fairly unusual one, democratic engagement, and, as Christina noted, leisure and culture. Following this, we commissioned 8 concept papers on each domain, and the purpose of this was to explore how best to define the concept and to review all possible indicators, all of which with a view to picking those indicators that had the strongest connection to our central concept of individual well-being. And that's something we can come back to, because our index at the national level is an index of individual well-being. In looking at measuring culture, in fact, that the leisure and culture domain was arguably one of the most difficult domains to work through. In the CIW, the definition of culture that was chosen focuses on artistic endeavors and how these expressions reflect the customs, tastes, and artistic and intellectual achievements of a diverse Canadian society. Just right there. This conception of culture is much narrower than the one that's being used by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, for example, focusing as it does on the consumption of culture as opposed to an anthropological or sociological lens. And so what we're measuring in the CIW is a definition of culture that emphasizes the well-being that Canadians experience as a result of their engagement in cultural activities. And thus, the indicators that we looked at and chose for this domain focused on participation in the arts, perceptions associated with culture, the experience of culture as a state of mind and the meaning and quality it holds for individuals, as well as the opportunities that exist in given communities and accessibility to artistic venues and expression. That said, ideas such as cultural pluralism and dialogue, human rights, equality of individuals and groups, and the strength of our community and family connections are also captured in our framework, these so-called culture as enablers indicators. The community vitality domain, for instance, assesses the degree to which communities are characterized by strong, active, and inclusive relationships. The first group of indicators chosen here look at social relationships, and specifically the level of social engagement, the extent of social support in a given community, and community safety. We also explore indicators of social norms and values, such as respect for diversity, tolerance, and sense of well-being, sense of belonging. The issue of poverty and inclusion is also central to our model, but it's a theme that cuts across all of our domains. We've had many long discussions and debates about how to tackle this and represent this type of theme in the index. And so we chose, through much debate, to focus systematically on tracking not only the magnitude of poverty and inequality in Canada, but to document, as data permitted, the gap in well-being between specific groups, such as Aboriginal peoples or low-income families and the like, against national benchmarks in each established domain. So we track the gap as a methodology for looking at the degree to which Canada is moving toward greater inclusion or more systematically tackling inequality. Our goal, as I alluded to, is to highlight and explore the degree to which all groups in Canada actively participate in the social, economic, and cultural life of our community. And so we have published several reports, actually, certainly all the conceptual papers and the technical papers behind the index, and most recently 2 major reports that look at trends in each domain and the composite. And I just wanted, by way of conclusion, to give you a bit of our findings using our Canadian Index of Wellbeing. And I should say that it's very clear that taking all dimensions of well-being into account certainly makes a difference in our understanding of how Canada is really doing. Our findings show, and here we are, this is from the Mars second report in 2010, that Canadians' quality of life certainly has not improved at anywhere near the pace of economic growth as measured by GDP. In fact, since 1994, and that's the base year of our index, up until 2010, Canada's well-being has seen an overall improvement of 5.7%. And this, of course, pales in comparison to the growth of 28.9% experienced in the country's GDP over this time. We did see some modest gains, for instance, and here is the indicator, the composite index of community vitality. In some domains such as living standards and community vitality, you'll notice the green line is, the black line at the top is GDP, the green line is community vitality, and the CIW, the composite index, is at the bottom. So we saw some progress in community vitality. But in other areas such as the environment, time use, and leisure and culture, we actually lost ground. We moved farther away from the vision we have of ourselves as a society. The issue, the leisure and culture domain was particularly troubling. When we compare the trends between time use and leisure and culture, we see that many Canadians may simply be too caught up in the time crunch to enjoy leisure, culture, or artistic activities in the company of family and friends. The results for us raised a very basic question: is this progress? Certainly, the economic growth that Canada has experienced up until the recession was laudable, but what does it mean to a society if it comes at the expense of less free time, fewer social connections, lower personal life satisfaction, and a much more stressful life, which our indicator in the leisure and culture domain reveal? In conclusion, I'd like to say something a bit about the experience, and I hope you can take it up in the discussion afterwards. We're seeing right now the emergence of a new generation of social statistics and community-based reporting initiatives such as the Canadian Index in Wellbeing or UNESCO's own work on the Culture for Development Indicator Project. And I think these are very important, not only because they offer, certainly because they offer, I believe, a more accurate snapshot of the world, empirically speaking, and thus provide us with a much better, sounder basis for better policy and programs. But I also think, and this is quite an interesting link to certainly some of the anti-poverty work we've been doing, that community-based indicator projects, or national ones such as the CIW, are emerging as a platform for articulating community aspirations, much in the way that Professor Mamou was talking about, and opportunities for engaging people in groups in constructing and informing dialogue that can move toward positive social change and concrete action. And that's certainly my experience working in the social development sector for many years in Canada. That indicator projects are not the preserve of quants and statisticians who get off on, generating the best and brightest index, but they can truly be illuminating social development tools that help communities tell their own stories. And it's extraordinary what the power of a map or a graph can do to mobilize and focus and concretize, generate energy and passion between a change agenda. And so we're thrilled to be here, and we hope that you can learn from our experience just as we've learned from all of yours. And we certainly hope that we can continue to work together to build societies that are sustainable in every way and that offer a better quality of life for everyone. Oops, sorry. And if you would like more information about the CIW, I'm very happy to talk to you about it, and you can visit our website. Thank you so much.